I had been doing music since I was 14, 15 years old. I hadn't wasn't my intention to become like a famous character or anything. What I'm famous for is pretty weird, actually. So some people might call me a meme, or but I mean, a meme would say that it's something that's on the internet. This was like I was like a real life meme. So the character that I was playing as was called the Neighkid Horse, right? And it's very much a pun on that, because I would play almost naked in my underwear, and in a horse head mask, and I would just have the guitar covering my private parts, if you, whatever you want to say. That all started out of desperation. So I told people I was going to make this movie. I told people I was going to become a busker, and then I went to Berlin, and I was garbage. I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what songs to play, and I sucked, and I didn't make any money, like maybe $1 or something. And then I thought to myself, like, oof, when you do weird things, people want to take photos, and people start to share those photos or videos, and it's so easy these days to become like a meme, or to get, have your 15 seconds, because everyone has a phone in their pocket.
Today, I have the pleasure of introducing a truly unique guest who has captivated the hearts with his vibrant personality and creative talents. Please welcome Carl, affectionately known as the Neighkid Horse from Berlin. Carl made waves in the European street performance scene, where he became the most photographed street performer across the continent. His captivating performances didn't just entertain passers-by, but also created a sense of joy and wonder which resonated with people across all walks of life. His time in Berlin was nothing short of legendary, and he quickly became a beloved figure in the city's artistic community. Carl has garnered a strong online presence, including a dedicated page on TripAdvisor, where fans could share their experiences and learn more about his future performances. But Carl's talents don't stop there. He's recently returned to Australia. He has embraced new adventures as a filmmaker, musician, and producer. Today, we look at Carl's journey from the unforgettable Neighkid Horse on the Berlin streets to his current projects and aspirations. So get ready for an engaging conversation with Carl into the world of street performance. Hey Carl, welcome to Innerhabit.
Hi, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
I'm good. Thanks for joining us. You've been in touch with me over the last, I think it's been prior to November last year, actually, where we've been in touch on Instagram. And also Facebook, because I joined a Facebook group, and that's how we initially interacted.
Yeah.
So the main point of this podcast is to understand a lot about you. So I believe you're from Melbourne.
Yes, well, originally I'm from Perth, but I've kind of spent most of my adult career in Melbourne, at least when I've spent that time in Australia, because I have spent a lot of time traveling around the world.
That's right. And one of your major, the most time that you've spent has been in Berlin. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So I went there in 2013 for the purpose of making a documentary, which originally I'd told myself it'll be 3 to 6 months, and that turned into almost 10 years. So it's been quite an experience. When I went there was to film a documentary, and that documentary was about Berlin's busking music scene. So that was filmed in 2013 and released in 2014, Busking for Berlin. Can be watched on YouTube. I did have it as something you could buy originally for a couple of years. I would sell it when I was busking as a purchase, but slowly over the years, no one really has DVD players anymore, let alone CD players or anything like that. And that's been a big issue for buskers. And actually, one of the things I touch on in my film, I sometimes lose track here, but in my upcoming film, because I've actually been making a sequel to the first film. And this sequel touches on a lot of the struggles that street musicians are having or have had to deal with in the change of technology with COVID. I mean, that's changed, I think, every industry in the world, COVID. So, yeah.
So I believe that you originally wanted to become a musician and you were also doing filming. So that was your expertise?
Yeah, so audio and music has always been like a big passion of mine. And I didn't actually get into the filming until a little bit later, until I think I was about 25, 26 when I got into filming. I'm 38 now, so if that gives you some sort of idea. But I had been doing music since I was 14, 15 years old. And I had really wanted to make that my career, and in ways I did, but it was one of those things where when I kind of got to the age of 25, I realized, is this a reality? Like, what are the chances that I'm ever actually going to be able to make it per se in this industry? I mean, it's a very tough industry. It's something that really you got to do just for passion, because the chances of you becoming like a successful rock star or musician or however you want to put it are very low. And then I had to, I guess, get a bit real with myself and be like, well, what if you're not gonna become that rock star that you wanted to be? What else would you do? And I thought, well, I love film, I love anything that is arty. So for me, that was kind of what pushed me onto that. And the topic of my movie was about buskers, because I had actually been asked to go film a lot of different projects. I mean, because I do filming, and a lot of my friends musicians, they said, oh, come and film us busk and we'll pay you some money. So I did, and I was actually surprised how much money they made busking. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to turn this into a film. I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to document the whole experience, never having been a busker. And yeah, one thing led to another, and that's how Busking for Berlin was created. And
sure. So now I understand you're really famous in Berlin.
Yeah, so that was all kind of a weird side story of the movie. So I hadn't wasn't my intention to become like a famous character or anything. What I'm famous for is pretty weird, actually. So some people might call me a meme, or but I mean, a meme would say that it's something that's on the internet. This was like I was like a real life meme.
Tell us a little bit about the character. What did you become on the streets?
So the character that I was playing as was called the Neighkid Horse, right? And it's very much a pun on that, because I would play almost naked in my underwear, and in a horse head mask. And I would just have the guitar covering my private parts, whatever you want to say. And that all started out of desperation. So I told people I was going to make this movie. I told people I was going to become a busker, and then I went to Berlin, and I was garbage. I was terrible. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what songs to play, and I'd sucked, and I didn't make any money, like maybe $1 or something. And then I thought to myself, like, oof, I've committed to this idea, this project, and I have no idea how I'm going to make it happen. And so I turned to comedy. I didn't intend to put on this horse mask. I just had it with me. I did buy it originally to attempt to make stupid YouTube videos, but I didn't intend to take off my pants or anything like that. That was just an offshoot of the movie, because when you put on a latex mask in summer, it's very, very hot. So I just started dripping with sweat. I took this horse mask off, and
before you knew it, you were famous.
Before when you do weird things, people want to take photos, and people start to share those photos or videos, and it's so easy these days to become like a meme, or to get, have your 15 seconds, because everyone has a phone in their pocket. And
that's fair enough. So now, just prior to this conversation, you mentioned that it's really hard to break into the music industry. Tell me why that is.
Well, why it's so hard to break into the music industry. I would say competition is your biggest issue. I mean, it's like everyone wanting the same dream job, but there's only so many, roles out there. And to be honest, if you really look into the background of anyone famous, a lot of the time you'll find that they come from families of people that are famous, or they've always had a bit of an upper hand or a connection or a personal thing. Very rarely do musicians make it completely on their own.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I've been working with bands, with DJs, in all different areas, parts of music industry, from booking bands to playing in bands to being a DJ to booking DJs to making music videos, and it seems to be the same story with almost everyone. It's a tough industry.
That's fair enough. Now, I'm gonna go back to when you became the horseman, or became the meme in Berlin. But you mentioned to me previously there was another way people were identifying you as being the horseman. So how was it that they were doing this?
Well, one of the weirdest stories is probably I was identified from my shoes. So I would wear a very unique set of shoes when I was playing. I mean, wasn't like a costume or anything, but I did like to be a bit flamboyant, and I had cowboy boots, because I was a horse. I mean, to me, that just seemed funny. Even though it's a cowboy that rides the horse. But anyway, I would wear cowboy boots, and I had spurs on them. And not very often do you see people wearing spurs in public or on the street, let alone even on a farm. And then I was on the tram later that evening, just dressed as myself, but I was wearing the same boots. And then someone came up to me and said, "Oh, I recognize you from your spurs." And that person turned out to be like a photographer, and they said, "Actually, I'd like to do a photo shoot with you." And that photo shoot ended up being the cover of my DVD. So that was a really interesting connect. You never know who you're going to meet. At first, when this person stopped me, I was like, "Is this just some creepy guy that wants..." I will admit, I get all kinds of messages as well, nice ones, creepy ones, you name it. I have had my share of creepy messages over the years. But look, other ways that people have seen me have also just been from my tattoos. I do have uniquely uniquely placed tattoos. Right now I'm wearing a jacket, so you can't see them all. But look, when I started, actually, I had no tattoos, and then over the years now I've probably got 50 or something. So I think that was a byproduct of living in Berlin.
Fair enough.
Everyone there covered in tattoos, so it felt awkward not to have any.
That's fair enough. So other than that, you've been traveling a lot across Europe. Was there a particular reason that you were traveling in Europe other than doing the documentary, or was it just an experience of life?
I think just an experience of life. I mean, I did have an opportunity to live there for a while. I have a British passport, which for a while was really good because you could live anywhere in Europe. But, I'm sure most of the people out there watching or listening do know that Brexit happened. That was when Britain left the EU. And so now I don't have the ability to live in the EU legally anymore for more than 90 days at a time. So that was one of the reasons for returning. I did try to get visas and things, and I did have them, but they only allowed you to do certain things and to earn certain amounts of money, and yeah, it was difficult. So I'm back, and look, I think 10 years was long enough. It was an experiment. I had a lot of fun. I met a lot of interesting stories. I have the sequel coming up. So that film is called Busk Life, and it's kind of set 10 years later, but it also covers the events that have happened in the last 10 years. So any weird story that I could find, but it also breaches the topic of how the world is changing and how these buskers have to adapt to this way of life. And I guess the underlying story for me is that sometimes you can't adapt, or maybe the world changes so fast that you need to make new plans. And even though I'd it had only been was only meant to be a part of a movie and was only meant to be for a few months. I kept doing this job well after the movie had finished, and I was doing it because it was good money and it was cash in hand and it was instant money. But yeah, the world is changing, and that's what the sequel is about. And yeah, I look forward to sharing that movie with you and with the people, and I think it'll give you a huge idea of like how much the world has changed, because the first movie was very much like an inspirational, go out, follow your dreams, do what you ever want to do. But the second movie is, I gotta admit, it's a bit bleaker. The world is changed. We're all really, I think a lot of people are struggling with like this economic crisis and like cost of living and stuff. So I touch on all those topics, and yeah, but that's just life. So that's why it's Busk Life. Anyway.
So while you were out on the streets, when you were doing your thing as a horseman, there was a lot of challenges that you experienced, particularly because you were singing on the loud boombox and there's a lot of noise and stuff. So tell us a little bit about the scene as to what would happen if you were on your mic, and what Berlin's all about in that sense.
So Berlin probably has one of the most unique music scenes in the world, and for different reasons. It's mainly famous for its techno party culture. I don't know if you've been to Germany or Berlin, but it is a rave city. The rules are very interesting because you can have all these amazing street parades and these loud techno concerts, but the rule for the street music is amplified busking is illegal, which makes, well, busking difficult. There are all different types of busking acts, and some people are just singer-songwriters with a guitar. Some people are doing rap or looping, or people are juggling or doing acrobatics. You name it. It can be anything. But a lot of these acts, you'll find you will need some sort of speaker, some sort of amplification to talk to the crowd, to talk to the masses. And well, with my act, I was wearing a horse mask. So to be able to hear me, I had to put a microphone, through my mouth, which is a lot of the comedy of it, because it looked stupid. And, it looked like I was deep throating a microphone. But, that's half of the show, it's comedy. I never took myself seriously, but this was an issue I'd constantly have with the police. Not being able to use the speakers or not being able to see the police coming was a constant thing because I'm wearing this latex mask. But look, we always find a way around it, and this would generally be asking for forgiveness, not for permission. Because if you ever ask, "Hey, can I come and play here?" they're like, "No." So you just do it, and then when they tell you off, you just pretend you're a tourist and then say sorry. But you can only kind of do that for so long, and especially when you parade yourself around literally in your underwear, it's kind of hard to forget that. So the police eventually were like, "Okay, well, we've seen you before." It's kind of hard to forget that the guy in his horse mask and his underwear. That became an issue. My own fame became a problem, kind of caused the demise of myself. But funnily enough, they never had an issue with playing in my underwear. The issue was playing with a speaker. And ironically, you can actually play with a drum kit. So I can hit a drum kit as loud as I want, and that's not against the law. But if I plug any guitar into any size speaker, that is. So there's a bit of a double standard there. And we're actually trying to change it. So one of the points of this next documentary is to kind of present these points and this fact to some sort of council or government and be like, "Look, here's these people's stories, this is the issues, how can we work together to get around this?" Because there are cities, like other cities in Germany, that have a permit system. You can go book an area to play. Dresden is one of these, Potsdam is another, and there's no issues. They just have a limit on the volume, not what system you're using. And Melbourne does the same, and I think we just need to adopt a system like that. It's just about being able to speak to the right people.
What would you say that your new documentary's about outside of these points?
Well, I'm still in the midst of editing, so it's still on the cutting room floor. So what it's about, look, I do have two underlying themes, and the theme is, well, one, to show the world kind of other people that haven't heard this story of how weird of a life I had as a horse. So and to embrace sometimes the weird things in life. So I do like to make kind of inspirational pieces that, you know, will kind of maybe question your life and your way a bit and go like, well, could I maybe do something a little different? And then the other part of it is, yeah, just dealing with the current issues we have and hopefully finding a way to change that for at least this demographic of people.
That's fair enough. Now let's look at that first point that you mentioned, where you say, let's, do something different. Now, it's all about taking risks, I suppose. And a lot of people sitting there thinking they'd be thinking, well, we've got to get a job once we graduate. We don't have the ability to take such risks. What advice would you have for these people?
I would love to give you an answer and say, go out and do whatever you want. But if I'm completely honest with you, I'm struggling with that reality myself of the cost of living crisis, that this is one of the reasons I stopped being a horse. It's one of the reasons I've taken on like a full-time job. You can't live in a fantasy land forever, but I'm glad I've tried these things. I don't have any regrets. I've lived a pretty weird and unique life, and really happy for all the opportunities that those crazy things have led me. And I will admit, the craziest stuff has always led me to like the best stories.
Okay, so how would you compare the cost of living abroad in comparison to the cost of living in Australia?
Yeah, well, look, it's not just Australia. I will admit the whole world has changed. Europe has got just as expensive as Australia. Maybe, look, there are certain things, and it depends kind of what industry you're in. I do notice, being in the music industry, seeing what's happening with like festivals in Australia. We're losing a lot of our festivals, and almost every second day I read the news and another festival has been cancelled. I do think a lot about like what's happening there. I think it's just getting a bit too expensive for smaller bands to tour. A lot of people don't think about all the extra costs that go in, especially if you're an international band. You've got to book hotels, you've got to book transport, you have to book the backline. And I don't want to discourage people, but there's also like a harsh reality of the world. Well, obviously the two biggest things I noticed were the prices, I would say, of cigarettes and alcohol is the biggest difference. And that's great if you're a non-smoker or a non-drinker, but you also have to understand that the price of these things doesn't just affect us. Like maybe it doesn't affect you, but the flow-on effects of those things affect other businesses. So the price of alcohol, for example, in Australia is very expensive, probably one of the most expensive in the world. So, an average drink, a beer these days will cost you anywhere from 10 to 15 to even, I've seen $20 for a beer if you want like a fancy one. Whereas in Berlin, I could get a beer for €3 for a large beer. There were places €1.50 even in a bar. Don't get me wrong, you have to know where those places are. And yes, there are places in Melbourne where you go, okay, there's a special and I can get an $8 pint. Now, while an $8 pint these days does seem cheap, I think back to like when I was a bit younger and there was a place that would have specials for $1 pints. So a lot's changed. And so I went a bit off track there, but when you go to a concerts, like these concerts survive off the sales of the alcohol and the drinks at the venue. So if no one is buying drinks anymore, this also affects then, the concerts and then the venues, and then, so yeah, it does have these flow-on effects. And so that would be the biggest thing because rent everywhere in the world is expensive, food everywhere in the world is expensive, you know.
Yeah. Look, I remember you were telling me that the rent whilst you were in Berlin was so cheap, and by the time you got out of there, it had got so expensive.
Yeah, so when I first moved to Berlin, my rent was only about €200, and now for the same place you're looking at about 1,000. So that's, you know, quadrupled.
Yeah.
I would say though that Australia has maybe almost been the same. I mean, I remember when I was younger, in my teens, I would pay about $100 a week rent, and now I'm seeing rooms advertised for. Well, I was in the Sunshine Coast, and I was paying $600 a week for a studio. So, you know, now I'm in a share flat with my brother. Well, I wouldn't say a share flat. I live with my brother.
Okay, so tell me what you're doing in Melbourne at the moment. So you've come back from Berlin. Obviously, there's been an issue where you can no longer use your British passport to travel across Europe without visas. So what are you doing back in Melbourne?
Well, funnily enough, I had come just for a birthday party. And at that birthday party, I was offered a job I couldn't refuse, doing film in the tech industry. So this is my first time, you know, in almost like 15 years that I'm kind of working a 9-to-5 job again. So that's certainly taking some getting used to after living this gallivanting around the world being a horse to now doing the corporate 9-to-5.
And you're still working from home, I take it. You have the ability to work from home.
I have the ability, yeah. So when I film on location, I try to go into the office as much as possible, just to we're constantly filming things at work, so that's kind of fun. When we don't have things to do, we have a YouTube channel. So,
that's fair enough. Make some content for YouTube.
Yeah, but it's completely different. It's not as fun as my other channels. It's very boring.
Right. So tell me, you've got about 3 YouTube channels, is that correct?
Yes, so I've got 3 ones that I'm actively using. I actually run over 10 of them, but I don't really use the other ones anymore, almost just for storage. So my first YouTube channel was purely live local Melbourne bands, and that's how I got into it. But I don't really run that anymore. My main 3 channels that I'm running, one is called Cull Travels, and that is just kind of my own personal opinion on some travel things. Then I have Globe Travel Adventures, which I don't really feature much in. I'm more behind the camera. It's a bit more documentary, informational style. So I'm not like, hey, check out what I did at this place. It's more like, here's the history of a place, and this is some of the things you can do there. So I'm trying to give more of not my own opinion, but letting you make up your own opinion, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to influence anyone. And then I have another one called Movie Masters, which is all things film, tech, audio, you know, because I love all of that. And I know that my channel is called Movie Masters, and a lot of the time I don't talk about movies, but I've actually been wanting to do a similar thing like you're doing here, where I talk to people about upcoming films, or my favorite films, or their favorite films. But we haven't got around to that yet. At the moment, it's just kind of being product reviews and upcoming features and nerd talk.
It's fair enough.
Yep.
Which is the channel that you spend most of your time on at the moment?
I will admit, I try to equally give them as much love as the other. I will say, there are periods where I spend a little bit more than others, but honestly, it is almost equal. So, and I get a sense of guilt if I haven't worked on one in a while. I don't know if you ever have that feeling with your YouTube, but if I haven't put out something in a week, I start to get antsy, and I'm like, oh, what am I going to put out next?
Look, to be honest, I only have one channel. It's Innerhabit. Yeah. But the thing is, you've always got to put content out. Otherwise, you lose the watch hours and stuff. And every YouTuber tends to go through that. So I have a business strategy that I'm currently working on as to how I can yes, YouTube may be one avenue, but maybe I'll look at different avenues where I can diversify what I'm doing. So whilst podcasting is one of the channels that I am doing, it's primarily for YouTube and my podcast, Apple, Spotify, and so on. I have a larger business idea that I'm looking to get into, but you got to build an audience, and that's what I'm currently working on. So it's not only YouTube. I've got my Instagram, which we communicate on quite often, other than WhatsApp. So that is also, there's also strategy behind what I'm doing there, and I've changed the strategy recently. So I'm going to be having things like courses and subscription-based models, not only on websites, but different content that I actually prepare. So there's a larger vision, larger plan. We'll see how it goes. You've got to have a better following and larger following. So that's what I'm trying to do.
I get it. I've told myself that once I get my 3 channels monetized. So currently I have one. Well, okay. You know how there's like the 2-tier monetization section?
Yes.
So you've got the 500 subscribers and your 3,000 watch hours. Then you have your 1,000 subscribers and your 4,000 watch hours. So one of my channels is fully monetized. I've been getting paid for over a year now, which is great. Ironically, it's the channel I use the least. But since that's, once you get monetized, that's it. Like you're done, you're good, you're gold. And it's such a rewarding feeling, especially that first paycheck you get. And my other 2 channels are like just on the cusp. So Movie Masters has over 4,000 watch hours. So that wasn't an issue. I found on tech, I could talk for a long time. I could make longer videos than the travel content. And there's always new tech coming out, and you can talk about tech from anywhere. Whereas the travel stuff, I had to be traveling all the time. And so I saw that as an issue, but I've got just over 900 subscribers, 926 currently, and 5,100 watch hours. So I would say I'm a month away from Movie Masters, like earning money. And then Carl Travels, similar situation. I've got 937 subscribers, so like right on the edge there, but I've only got 3,400 watch hours. And as you'll probably know, watch hours is probably one of the harder things, because they eat away at each other as well, like 365 days. Did you find, okay, whether you want to have this in the conversation or not or whatever, but I've found for getting subscribers, shorts is like what will get you the subscribers. But yeah, for the views, you just got to have longer videos.
This is pretty common across the whole idea of starting the YouTube channel, across the board.
I do find though, like all of my channels like are mainly driven by 1 or 2 videos, you know, which is good. So I like, if I would say any like advice to some people, like all it takes is one video. You just got to get that, and you never know what it's going to be. Like my video was the I'm leaving Australia video, which is, I don't know, like 60 or 70,000 views now. And then on my Movie Masters channel, one was a story about almost getting arrested for flying a drone, and it seemed to be the controversial topics that really hit off. Although my other one is just folding up a tent. Is my most popular video.
Folding up a tent.
Folding up a tent. Yeah, how to fold up a pop-up tent in under 60 seconds.
You did it in 60 seconds?
Yeah. It took me a lot of practice.
How long did you practice that for?
And then I filmed it really well. So that's like another thing, like you can always find a video that someone else has done and do it better. That's what I did with that one, really. I looked up things like I had, and I remember when I bought that tent, like I bought the tent with the intent of making money. I also went to a zoo, and I made a video about that zoo. And when I bought the ticket, I was like, all right, if I can eventually make back the money that I spent on going to the zoo, and I did. All my extra footage, my B-roll, I put on stock websites and I sell them. And I'd filmed some cute little monkey, and I remember it was like a 6-second long video, and that sold for like $70 the other day, and that's like $70 US, and the ticket for the zoo was only like 35 Australian. So You know, just from one little sale, I made back my trip. So I think a lot about YouTube in those ways. I mean, I know Mr. Beast was a bit similar. Like, you got to spend money to make money, and
So tell me something. I do agree with that. In some sense, you got to spend money to get money. But stock photography, does that really work? Like, you see thousands, if not millions, of photographs and on all these websites, and then you're trying to sell your photograph or even your video, whatever. Does it even work?
it does. I mainly do video, so while I do have some photos, I would say 90% of the money comes from video sales, and most of those videos is just drone footage. It looks good and it's hard to replicate. And what I mean by that is, one big issue that we're talking a lot about today in the world today is AI taking our jobs. And I think especially people that work in the stock world, you know, AI stock photography, AI generated videos, AI generated images, you know, is this going to take our jobs? Like, yeah, a lot of them. I constantly have to use B-roll and find B-roll for my clients, and it's all stock stuff. Sometimes it's even AI generated stock stuff. But what I find is that if you need a video of a town or a city, you can't kind of AI generate that, because AI gets a lot of stuff wrong. As much as it is good. For example, we're not going to have AI generated wedding. Well, I can't imagine it. So wedding photographers, their jobs are safe.
Yeah, you know, I was speaking to somebody about this. It was actually last week. I attended a friend's party, and I was talking to a developer, you know, somebody who works the back end developing code and stuff. And she was very clear that it's a lot of noise in the industry that, oh, they're going to take my job, they're going to take my job. But in essence, it only makes the work easier. The code that AI actually generates still has errors. You still got to fix it up and make it work for you. And in this whole conversation with her, it actually came up that people need to look at AI a little bit differently. They cannot look at AI as it's going to take a job, because at the end of the day, that's not possible. So, for example, she explained that her employee went on holiday and she was left to do some of that work herself. So what she did, and she had 2-day time frame to turn things around. What she did was, yes, she did use an AI tool to spit the code out, which made her life easier. But it didn't necessarily mean it was accurate. She still had to look at all the code, fix it up. She was able to deliver the project on time, which made a big difference for her. But what you're saying is, this noise is probably unjustified at this stage. You know, with AI, it's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of skills to actually make it perfect. And the chances are that it just won't.
It's getting better though. I will admit, in the last 3 months, it's exponentially gotten what I thought would take 2 years to get there. But I have found some uses for it. If we want to chat about this, creating descriptions for our videos, finding tag words, keywords. I mainly use that, giving me title ideas, but also helping transcribe scripts, turning them into descriptions. So a lot of the time when I make my own video, I'll then run my own video through like a transcription program, which will then give me everything I've said, and then I run that into ChatGPT and then use that to help me come up with my own description using my own words. So I'll be like, here's my video transcription, turn that into a description. Recently with my new film, I had to clean up some bad audio, and I've used AI to recreate bad audio. So look, it has helped. I guess in the past though, I would have gone to an audio specialist, although I am an audio specialist. So
yeah, that's fair enough. Now, what sort of tools do you use? I mean, you mentioned ChatGPT. Is there any other sort of tools that you would recommend to people?
It depends what you're doing. ChatGPT is for any text-based information. That's real helpful. For video and for YouTubers, So may I ask, what program do you use, or is it your editors that use it?
No, my editors do all my work. Lucky me, I don't have to edit. But the other thing too is I noticed that Riverside, the platform we're using to record this podcast, it's really good in the sense that it can take all the gaps away. So if you go the ums and the ahs, they all get taken away. If we need to delete things, it does enable me to do that. So that makes it somewhat easier. But I do find that my editors actually pull the videos out and then manually do it at their end, which they seem to still prefer over automated things.
I've tried both. So I have tried an automated gap removal program, and I found that it took me longer fixing up its errors than it did if I were just to do it manually. So yeah, I tried a couple of those programs and then ended up just reverting back to my manual shortcuts.
Yeah, so there you go. It's not exactly perfect.
Not exactly perfect, but one feature I found the most useful is I use DaVinci Resolve to edit my video with and my audio, and it has a voice isolation button, which is absolutely fantastic. It will take your boxy voice and make it sound crisp and clear as day. And that, if it's AI, I don't know if it's AI or just an equalization, but it's got to use some sort of AI to do that, and that is probably my most used feature. And now that they've also just put in a new feature called Music Remixer, where say you put in some backing tracks, you can then take out the vocals or the drums or separately, and it's all just the one file. So there are some things, and this does make my life a lot easier as an editor. So,
and what advice would you have for people who are starting the YouTube channels? Should they do it? Things are changing. The landscape on YouTube's changing. The algorithm changes every month or something.
I would say my advice is just be realistic and niche down. Everyone says niche down, but it's true. You need to find something that you like. Don't do something just because you think it's going to be popular, right? Genuinely have an interest in it, because otherwise you will lose all interest in it. Because YouTube will consume you. I think people need to have realistic expectations about how long it will take to grow, how long it will take to get monetized, and don't give up, because a lot of people want to do it, and it will take time. But if you quit, it's not going to happen.
Tell me something. You say that, and niche down is a topic that I hear over and over again. And then you got some lovely YouTubers. I say lovely because you genuinely are. You share a lot of information. They tend to say, don't niche down. So really, there's just a world of advice out there, and if you listen to it, you do. And the other thing I do find is listening to their advice sometimes doesn't work as well. So for example, when I'm doing my keywords on my tags on my videos, I've just started doing them on my own, and it seems like I'm getting more views than listening to all these people telling you how to put tags on and how to put keywords on.
I've heard I wouldn't bother with tag words. People say this a lot. I'm not sure why. I do put a lot of effort into my tag words. I don't know if they work or not. The niche down thing, I do think works. So let me give you an example. So with Movie Masters, I have released videos on lenses, on camera bodies, on drones, anything even on busking speakers. And I found that I looked at what made that I got the most subscribers on, and it's my drone stuff. So I looked back and thought, okay, well, the drones is where I'm getting the views, so make more drone related videos. And I did, and it worked. I found that those drone related videos maybe they didn't get the response from my best video. You're not going to get that same response every time. If you make one good video, you can't just replicate that. It doesn't work that way. But what you'll find is that if it is working on one topic, it probably will kind of work. So I did find all my drone videos work pretty well, and so it makes me think, okay, should the channel just be about drones? And I've ignored my advice, and I just still keep doing random things. But if I look at the statistics, it is the drone videos. So if I were to take my own advice and to do more stuff on drones, but honest with you, I'm just like, I like drones, but I'm not in love with drones. It was just a part of filmmaking, you know? But yeah, I would like to, for example, talk about movies more. I think that would be more fun, like this kind of podcast style thing. I think that for me would be a really enjoyable format. But sometimes, you know, finding the guest to talk to, blah, 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 it's easier said than done.
Okay, so a little bit of advice for people traveling to Europe to start with. What advice would you give them?
Well, pack light. I think people overpack all the time, and you would be surprised to know how little you actually need. Clothes, most of the time, you can get for fairly cheap. So I tend to pack my electronics, like my cameras and drones and things, over bringing other equipment. I save a lot of money by just having a backpack. I constantly never shut up about this thing. So I once used to have my MacBook like coming out the side, and the zip broke off, and I dropped my computer, and it was like a $4,000 computer, and put a big crack in it. And then after that, so I'm gonna buy myself like a proper good camera bag, and this is called the Airport Commuter. It's the exact size that I can carry on, and my one thing is just packing light and saving money and not getting and looking out for scams.
Yeah. So look, I'd like to thank you, Carl, for coming on Innerhabit. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot from you in the sense from the YouTube side, but also the lovely stuff that you've done over in Berlin. So it's been interesting. I will share your video link when I get it with the public so they can watch the second part. I know you've got the first part and you've shared the links with me there. So that's also going to be out on the internet. I will share it with people.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.